In this movie, I'm going to show you how to make some custom shapes. Here I have a layout that I found in a gallery, and I really like the layout, and I actually own the kit that this layout was made from. However, the kit does not contain a couple of the elements that are in this layout, including this bracket here and this circular stuff going on in the background. But I can quickly and easily make these for myself and use them in a layout that's similar to this, and then have them as a custom shape to use in any future layout that I might want. I'm going to start out with a new blank image, and this is only 600 by 600 because it was a gallery preview, and because I'm going to make a shape, the shapes are independent of file sizes, so I can actually do this on a 600 by 600 page as well. So, and I'll show you how that translates to 12 inches. So let's just come in here and say 600 by 600 at 72 ppi is just fine. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to start off with a piece of text. So I need to get my type tool. I'm going to click in here for my type tool, and I'm going to type a bracket. Can't see my bracket, it happens to be black. I'm going to grab my move tool, and the way that I like to change the color of my type is, first of all, I need to change my foreground color to black, or I can leave it as the background color. I'm going to teach you a keyboard shortcut, and you should learn it for the foreground color first. If you notice, there's a couple little dots here. This one, I can click on it, or I can just hit the letter X and restores the default. The other one is because they were reversed. The letter D is default, and the letter X will switch them back and forth. If I hit X, I'm going to switch the foreground and background color. Okay, so D for default, X to switch the colors. So now I have black as my foreground color. I know this is still selected. I have my move tool, and I can fill it. To fill it with the foreground color, you want to do Option, Delete, or Alt Backspace on the PC. Keyboard shortcut. Great keyboard shortcut to remember. I use it all the time. Option, Delete, or Alt Backspace. Okay, so now I have my bracket, and I'm using, if we come up to my window and choose my character panel, you can see I'm using Cooper Headline. You can use whatever font you like. You can go through your fonts and see what's going to give you a nice bracket. Now I can come in here and I can try and set, it's at the highest in here, or I can come in here and say, oh, well, let's try 300. Well, that's still not big enough. And it doesn't really matter, like this number doesn't matter. Actually, the size doesn't matter either, but I do want it bigger just because I want to work on something bigger. So to change the size without worrying about any specific size, I can do a transform. So Command or Control T will allow me to transform, and then I can just pull it out. I'm holding down the Shift key to constrain the proportions, and I'm going to pull it out, and now I'm going to just hit return to accept that. And that looks pretty good, but maybe I want it a little bit fatter, like maybe these ends are a little too narrow. I can easily add edges to this by doing a layer effect. So I'm going to come down here to my FX menu, and I'm going to choose stroke. And unfortunately you can't see this down here. You can also access the layer effects up here, and I'm going to choose stroke. I would like to have a black stroke, so I'm going to click in my color, and I'm going to choose black. And I want it to be on the outside so I can actually see it. And look how fat that is. Well, that's a little too fat. Let's not get too crazy. So I'm just going to adjust the size here until I'm happy with it. That looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now I need to rasterize my layer. And I can rasterize it, but then I'm still going to have the effect. I need to make the whole thing into pixels. I'm going to do it all at once. I'm going to I'm just going to make a new layer. Clicked on the new layer icon. I'm going to select both of these layers. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to choose, it's going to make me rasterize anyway. I'm going to rasterize the type layer first, and then I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to say merge layers. So now I no longer have live text and I no longer have a layer style. I just have pixels. So if I turn my background layer off, you can see it's just pixels. I need to turn this into a selection, and from the selection I'm going to make a work path. To turn my pixels into a selection, I'm going to hold down my Command or Control key, and notice when I mouse over the layer thumbnail I get a hand with a little marching ant line around it. When I click, it's going to turn those pixels into a selection. I am now going to go to my Paths panel, and at the bottom of my Paths panel I have an icon right here that says Make Work Path from Selection. I'm going to click on that, and now I have a work path. Once I have my work path, I can make any path into a custom shape. So I can come up to my Edit menu and choose Define Custom Shape. I'm going to call it Bracket. And now that I have this, I don't need any of this stuff anymore. I'm actually going to get rid of this completely because this wasn't big enough for an actual layout anyway. So I'm going to close this up, and I'm not going to save. And we're going to go ahead and make ourselves a new 12 by 12 layout. So I've got 12 by 12 inches at 300 ppi. Click OK. I'm going to come down here to my Custom Shape tool, and up here I have my shapes. I'm going to open this up and you can see all of your shapes. This view isn't really helpful. It's kind of small. When you get into some more intricate shapes, it can be hard to see them. So you can see I have the default shapes plus my new one. Here's a little flyout menu. I can load more shapes. I have a lot more shapes than this. I just don't have them in the Photoshop folder. I actually have them someplace else on my hard drive. But I'm just going to change this to large list. Actually to large thumbnail. I like that much better. And I'm going to click my new shape, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw it out. Now if I don't hold down the Shift key, I'm not constraining the proportions, and I can do all kinds of crazy things with it. If you want it exactly the way you drew it, then just hold down the Shift key and it'll come out the perfect size. I think I actually kind of like it a little bit better like that. And of course this is probably way too big for what I'm trying to do here, right? This bracket was only this big. I can probably make a much smaller one that will work just as well. That looks like about a good size. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in on this, and at this point I can put some paper in here, use it as a clipping mask, or I'm going to run a brush on the inside to make it look like this with the little stitching. However, if you notice, I put it on my background layer. That's not what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to make a new layer first. And there's some choices up here when I use my custom shapes. These little buttons here, I can choose to make a shape layer, which will just make a new layer. I'll make it like that big, which will be a shape layer. The one I have chosen is pixels, so you can see it actually laid down pixels. Let's try the shape layer. It creates a different type of layer. Or I could also create a path, which of course I don't really want a path. That did nothing. It created a path over here in the Paths panel, which I'm not interested in having, so I'm going to undo that. We want pixels. We don't want it to be a shape layer, so I'm going to throw that away. So when you're using your shapes, most of the time you're going to want to have this one selected where you're going to fill the pixels. So I've got the pixels filled, and in the next movie I will show you how to make a clipping path with a piece of paper and then run the brush around it.